Jimmy wants more small forwards. Modular forwards weren't good enough. We're live. It's 7:15-ish, so we're going to be a little short tonight because I'm going to stop at 8 o'clock. But today we're talking about the couple things. One is the photo or the video that I put up today. We're also talking about the photo, the thumbnail photo, but the video that I put up today is, excuse me, running superchargers. One was on a modified 4.6 liter 2-valve, and then the other was on a modified, again, 5.4 liter 4-valve. Both of them, as you would imagine and expect, responded very well to adding boost. I mean, everybody responds well to boost in usually a percentage gain sort of way, although neither one of these were without their issues. Both of them had issues. And the issues on both of them were the same. They were both basically blower belt issues and attending slippage. And this normally manifests itself at like higher engine speeds. We've had it with other examples too. A good example of that is the Cadillac supercharger that I ran on when we tried to run it on the 6 liter or the 5.3. After we ran it on the 4.8, I think it was on the 6 liter, but we had a problem with belt slippage. And when you have a belt slippage problem, it's a little frustrating because you know that the thing, you can see it, that the thing wants to make more power, that the power output's climbing rapidly. It's really getting going and really getting happy. And then all of a sudden, like, the party shuts down. I've actually had firsthand experience with this when I was running in the Bridgestone Supercar Series with a 5 liter Mustang that was supercharged, and we had a Vortec on it, and we lost the blower belt because the thing was running well. It was making lots of power. It was tuned very good. It had good power, as much or, relative to the other guys that were in the class. And so I was, in the first couple of laps, I was, holding my own and moving up, and we had good power. So I was able to pass some people, which was really good. And then when you lose like 200 horsepower because the blower belt comes off, it's a whole different car. And it's a whole different race after that, because now everybody, in addition to being really good drivers and having better handling and braking and aerodynamics, now they all have way more power than you too. So it's just not a good situation. So it makes a big difference. So having the belt there is a critical issue. And it was on the 2-valve, although we could run this thing a little over 6,000 on the 2-valve, and it ended up making over 600 horsepower because we were starting with a motor that made about 400 already. So it was doing fairly well. So we had to change the camshaft. This was a non-PI motor, so it had a higher compression by putting PI heads on it. We had fairly nicely done ported PI heads. We had the 274 cams in. We had a PI intake manifold and the AccuFab elbow and throttle body and long tube headers. And then adding the Vortec to that just, was like icing on the cake. And we had the Vortec kit on the 4.6 valve had a little small intercooler on air to water. But and I didn't really know this at the time, but at that 600 plus horsepower level is probably starting to get a little bit restrictive. I didn't ever measure the pressure drop across that core back then, and I should have. And I have since then done that on 5 liter applications. I think we did it when we were running that on a 351, and that core that they use on the 5 liter stuff and on this 2-valve starts to be restrictive at this kind of power level. So what we did to cure that back then, and only because the guys at Vortec were smart enough to know, they said, hey, look, if you're going to be trying to make lots of power with this thing and you're going to step up to an even bigger blower, I think we tried a JT trim on this thing. If you're going to step up to a different blower, you need to have more intercooler flow. So we ended up they made a custom setup where we had 2 of those cores. And so we were flowing the boost through 2 of those cores, which is still, beneficial. And we could get more flow rate that way. But we ran into the same problem. Even though we had more blower and more boost and more intercooler on the 4.6, we ended up making over 700 horsepower, close to 750, I think. But the problem is that it just didn't, we didn't solve the drive issue. We didn't have an 8 rib setup. We didn't have a 10 rib setup. We didn't have a cog setup. And all of that really should be done when we start getting up in these elevated power levels. And then we had the same thing because we basically ran the same combination. The blower mount was just different for the 4-valve because we're mounting it to a different cylinder head and front cover. But the blower is in the same position. We're still driving it with the same kind of crank pulley. And so the tensioner and all that and the water pump are all still kind of in the same position. So we had the same problem. We just weren't able to solve it. Both of these things happened about the same time. I was doing a lot of this modular testing back when I did the book that I wrote on modular Ford performance. So the same kind of problem. We could spin it up to a certain RPM, and as we showed in the 4-valve video, I did a test where we ran the intercooler with ice water, which always makes a big difference. So we put ice water through the core, and the intercooler core that we used on that one was different than the one that we used on the 2-valve. On the 5.4 4-valve that came from Sean Hyland, I used a dual core intercooler that we had run on the Bonneville Civic. And it was also not ideally suited for that power level because we're making 850 or something. And this thing could have easily gone way over 900 horsepower if we would have had enough belt. and so that we had continued blower speed and continued engine speed. That combination of things would have definitely made a difference. And then especially when we had the ice water in there, it would have helped. We were running race gas in it, and not even E85. E85 would have added even more power. But the thing was certainly on its way to making really good power. But again, and then when we put the intercooler on, or when we put the ice water in the intercooler, it was now making more power, and we got belt slippage at an earlier engine speed, as indicated by that, and that's in the video. You guys can take a look at that. But the ice water helped. And then on the 4.6 valve, I also did a camshaft test to show you what happens, because we ran I actually put the stock cams back in the 2-valve after running it with the comp cams. I just wanted to see, and I don't remember, honestly. I'm trying to think back. I can't remember if the stock cams that they gave me were actually PI cams or if they were truck cams. I can't swear to that. But they were stock 4.6 2-valve cams, and they were not non-PI cams. They were either PI truck cams or PI Mustang cams, and don't remember which one they were. But at any rate, there was a big difference in power going from the stock cams that we tested to the 274 cams that we ran under boost. It was about 75 horsepower, so it was quite a bit. Big difference in power from cam timing, and almost all of it was actually at the top of the RPM range, which is not unusual, because when we do these cam tests on these modular Fords, and this is one thing I didn't like, because I put these 274 cams in my 98 Mustang that I had as a project car, where I was driving it around, and we were trying to make 300 at the tire with a non-PI motor, which was just silly, without boost or anything, just an NA deal. But I drove around these cams, and they definitely lost power down low. So they were better from 4,000 or 4,500 to 6,000 or 6,500 than they were down low. They were not good down low. They definitely lost a lot of power. I would pick smaller cams for a street driver. I wish that I had put the 262s in there, and that's what I recommended in the video. But the cams were worth quite a bit of power over the stock ones, especially at the top. And with a blower, it was a nice deal, and it allowed us to make pretty good power. So that is in the videos. You can see what the cams do. My other question is, and we'll make this be the poll maybe for tonight. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. That if you guys haven't seen it, the thumbnail is a GT500 engine bay with a KENNE Bell supercharger upgrade on the GT500 motor, on the 4-valve GT500 motor, with I think that has a mammoth intake and a big throttle body, but it has one thing that I don't like about it. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do a poll for that. So we'll make it easy then. Is there something you would change on the GT500 motor pictured in the thumbnail? Is there anything on there that you would change? So, and we will scroll back. Where is everybody? Yeah, there's not that many people here tonight. Good evening, everyone. Everyone's here. That pulley looks small, and the intake hose looks like it would create some turbulence. Hope everything's well. JR's in the house. Barry's here. Richard, if I did an LSXR style manifold with interchangeable runners for the mod motors, would you put some testing videos of it on your channel? Yes, if you did an adjustable, are you doing a Coyote manifold or a mod? Because I've already done adjustable modular intake manifold, so I know what those do. What's the max boost the plastic intakes can take? We've run almost 30 pounds on factory composite intake manifolds. Hey, did the LS-M122 adapters ever start materializing, or is the manufacturer still MIA? You mean Tom Demuse? He makes adapters. The guys that I did the tests with on putting that Ford racing blower on there that also fit the GT500 blowers. No, he makes those adapters. Yeah, Casey's right. The composite manifolds will not like nitrous backfires. Most things don't. Maybe cup cars use a 13 horsepower Briggs and can get up to 100 miles an hour. That's really fast. Todd, so you just got notified? Well, good. See? Looks like it needs a 1471 on it. 1471's a lot. Casey, yeah, Dan was asking, or Casey was asking if on an air-cooled VW motor, if we would necessarily need to run more ring gap than you would on a water-cooled motor. How about a 1997 T-Bird original Survivor 462 valve worth the time to boost? They all are worth the time to boost. What would be cool, and the one blower that I get more comments on than anything for the modular Ford is the casting that Ford Racing did that integrated it's an M90 or an M112 blower for the 462 valve non-intercooled. I ran some tests on it, and it worked fairly well. It was non-intercooled, so it didn't make a ton of power, but everybody liked it, and everybody liked the way that it looked. I think that's because I took the time and put it on a purple background and so photographed very, very well, and people liked it. It's not nearly as powerful as a Kenny Bell or a Vortec or obviously a turbo, but people seem to really like it though. Richard, I think I have excessive crank pressure. Well, it depends on how you're doing your crankcase evacuation. Are the valve covers vented, and is the center valley vented? Just got out of the garage for the night. I was thinking about, I get guys that comment about, you get these fanboy Coyote guys and then fanboy LS guys arguing about which one's better, and oh, I can make all this power with Coyotes, like, unopened, as they say. And I was just thinking about something that if you had a factory LS, and let's say that it had 19 thousandths ring gap or something, and then you had a Coyote that also had 19 thousandths ring gap, the Coyote would have more ring gap because the bore size is smaller, right? Isn't the bore size on a Coyote 3.5 or something like that? $82 millimeters. That's actually bigger than I thought. Yeah, 3.6. That's still smaller than a 4-inch bore on an LS, or it's still smaller than even a 3.780. So relatively speaking, relative to its bore size, it would have more ring gap. But this is going to cover 4.6 liter. We talked about 4.6 liter stuff. Still waiting on my 468 from LNR. It's been 9 months. That seems like a long time. Have the valve covers vented, and are you getting blow by? Todd, it wouldn't surprise me if you hurt the motor, given what you were telling me about air fuel and stuff. Calcitrants in the house. What's up? Tony, you're late, but you haven't missed anything. I didn't talk about anything important. Stupid question, but are all the different generations of Coyotes the same bore and stroke? They are. They just changed other things. Hurt motor means ring damage. No, hurt motor usually means piston damage. Although I don't know. Todd, I don't remember. Do you have forged pistons in that thing? Panama's in the house. Diego, what's up? People say 450 wheel horsepower on a 96 to 98 Cobra is the limit because of the rods. No. We know that that's not the case with the Cobra. We've made lots more than that. Houston, Texas in the house. Learning about Coyotes. I came from the Ellis family. They're all of these good with proper preparation. It's easy to make lots of power with any of these things. And that's the point, is that you get guys that say, oh, Coyote, best thing ever, or LS, best thing ever, whatever they're arguing about. And what they don't realize is actually both of those can be really good. I mean, they're not 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint turbo motors, but they're still good. Is there something you would change on the GT500 pictured in the thumbnail? Yes, 41%. So if you guys are answering, let me know what you think that you would change. I'll tell you what I would change, and I'll tell you the thing that bothers me about this photo is it's the air filter. It's a big, one, I like it because it flows a lot. We know that because we tested it. We tested it versus a stock airbox. And that filter, because Kenny Bell went to great lengths when they were doing this to find a filter that was sized enough to make the kind of power that they're making. I don't remember if this was the 3.6 on there at the time that they were testing, but you could put really big blowers on this GT500 motor. You put them on the 5.4s or the 5.8s. So you can put a big throttle body, you need a big inlet, because anything that is the restriction in the inlet side will be a restriction, and it will make less power and less boost. So everything has to be big. The air filter has to be big. The mass air housing has to be big, and obviously it has to be recalibrated. The throttle body has to be big. The inlet connecting the throttle body to the supercharger and the inlet of the supercharger all have to be big, because you want to eliminate any sort of loss going into the supercharger. So all that stuff has to be big. And that filter is very big and sizable and will support a lot of power. I think that thing will support 1,000 horsepower. The thing that I don't like is that it's an open element filter. And when you close the hood, it's going to be drawing under hood, open element, really hot, like engine compartment air into the blower. And that's not good. You need to try to get cold air to it. So it would be better if that was inside of a box and the box was ducted only to the fender well where it could grab air, or take the headlight out or do something. But when we're testing, if the hood's open, when you're on the chassis dyno like everybody does, and you're testing with the hood open, yeah, it looks all great. It looks wonderful. But when you're driving around and you can change the air going into the motor by 100 degrees or more, things can get really bad. So that is my issue with what's going on there. All the blower is good, and I mean the motor is great and all that, and so you can make lots and lots of power. And all the things I think on that photo were all designed to make lots of power, and including the filter. It's just that not when the when the hood's closed. Marty, it's okay. We live and learn and we repeat, just like with a little less timing. Yes, definitely. And actually, if you look at the videos I have up, a lot less timing is the way to start out with, and then sneak it in a little bit at a time. It's much better to have a working motor with less timing in it than it is to try to maximize it. Can you do a leak down test that will tell you if there's a blow dry problem? Yeah, you can, right? Todd, do you have a compression test or a leak down test? Ford did step up to the 5.8 liter motor in the GT500 after the 5.4. Have you seen any of the L8Ts? It's the 6.6 liter. I haven't done any testing with them, but I know what they are. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. Yeah, everybody hit the like button. On a misaligned intake port, is it best to focus on alignment and shaping of the short side or of the rest of the port? I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about the alignment between the intake manifold and the cylinder head? Late to the live stream. Good topic. I asked before about 3-valve stuff. I don't have any. Well, I've run 3-valve stuff, but we've never run 3-valve stuff where we could control the cam timing. So we did it with fixed cam timing when we did it. Talk about the 4-valve Mach 1 from the 04. That's just a Cobra motor. That's just a 4-valve Cobra motor that has higher compression than the 03 Cobra motor does. What about cutting heat extractors over the headers on a Fox body hood? I did that on my Mustang. My Mustang had a louvered hood because I had envisioned at some point not having a Vortec and having a twin turbo where the turbos would be right there, and then all the extractors would allow all that heat to come out. It's a good idea. Plus, louvers looked cool on that car. And when you're sitting at a light, when you're sitting there waiting, you could see the heat coming out of the louvers, which I always thought was cool. Building a big block Ford, 500 inches, 593, 611 lift, 221, 229. Can't decide on heads, Edelbrock, trick flow, airflow. What else should I look at? That's a pretty small cam for a 500-inch big block. So it's not like you're going to be maxing out any of these heads that you've listed there. You could put something inexpensive on there. All of those are good, and all of those will give you more than enough power because you're limiting yourself by that small camshaft. I think Ford is going to do the 7.3 liter in a 2024 model year GT500. I'd be surprised if they went NA stuff. Why do you think in competition like World Cup Finals modular is limited to lower displacement? Probably because they have 4-valve heads and not 2-valve heads. Do you know of any advantages from the 5.8 or the 5.4 besides lower displacement? I'd have to go back and look to see if they did anything to make the block stronger or if even the overbore makes it weaker. I think when Mahovitz did the I'm thinking when he did that GT500 that went 300 in the standing mile, I think it was a 5.4. Do I kind of remember that as? What happened? I'm going to see if I can search. The road to 300. Let's see if they have a listing here. Mark Heidecker. It's a really cool looking car, though. Yeah, the Ford GT came from Ford with a 5.4 liter modular Ford. So 2 precision 82 millimeter 8285s. Movich utilized the stock aluminum block. Yeah, I think he kept it at a 5.4 inches. That's actually a good story. That's a super cool looking car. Richard, I just picked up an S475, putting it on an LS57 with a 5.3 liter Gen 4 internals. Pro LS6 CC dome piston. For 243 heads. You'll only see 8th mile track. What cam? Does it have gear and stuff in it where you don't have to be concerned about response rate? Maybe the hot rod cam for that. Let's see. Which is faster, a twin turbo 5.3 from 2001 or a 6.2 supercharged from 2009? I think it's a supercharged 5.2 would be hard pressed to beat twin turbo deal depending on the turbo sizing. Crazy horse. Maybe even just tips to consider while choosing what compression to pick on E85 twin turbo Hemi 1800 horsepower. Because the turbos will give you all the power that you need. And if you're not class limited in any way, I normally wouldn't go with high compression. The reason I wouldn't want to go with high compression, as you do that, I think it tends to narrow your tuning window. So everything has to be spot on. And the gains that you start getting for me on turbo things going above 10-1, the gains start getting diminishing. You'll pick up power, and guys do it in classes where, hey, look, we have to do this because we're limited by this little 75 millimeter turbo or whatever. But if you're not, and you can, and you have 2,000 horsepower with the turbos, then you can make that power, and you could do it at 10-1, you could do it at 12-1, you could do it at 15-1. But as you go up in compression, I think you go up in problems. I have MMR timing stuff, better rods, ring gap when we rebuilt my 543 valve. Just curious what the horsepower numbers are. I don't know. I can only look at what we did with the 5.3 stuff, but I've never run a 5.4 3-valve. I mean, what we did with the 4.6 3-valve stuff, I've never done a 5.4 3-valve. Yeah, Ford didn't put 5.4s in cars except for those. They did it for the Mustangs, right? For those Cobra Rs. I don't know what happened to Sean Hyland. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I was watching the intake manifold spacer video today. What about a heat shield? On which video are you talking about? I don't know which video you're talking about. Hey, brother, I love your videos. I had a Terminator Cobra, but really wanted to get a 9901 Cobra and do an NA build. What mods would it take to get 450 wheel horsepower? That's going to be really hard to do out of a 4.6 4-valve NA. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's going to take a lot of stuff. It's going to take a lot of engine speed, first of all. So it's going to take ported heads. It's going to have to take a very, very short runner manifold. It's going to take very good high compression, very, very good camshafts. It'd be better if the motor was bigger than 4.6 liters also. Richard, what would you suggest as tuning our standalone ECU? It would depend on what you're doing. For most street things, just reflashing the thing that you have and tuning it can usually be done. We use standalone things only because it's so much quicker and faster for us to be able to tune it and do all of the testing that I needed to get done. I couldn't do that with a factory ECU, but you can in a vehicle. And it's nice that in the vehicle, the factory ECU also has all of the other things under control. It has the transmission and stuff and cruise control, all the things that you need to get done. You can get the same power from all of those things because they'll give you the right air, fuel, and timing. My neighbor had an engine fire on a 4-valve motor in a Lincoln pickup. He's going to pull it and chuck it and put a 2-valve in it. Is it a 5.4 4-valve, or is it, if it's a Lincoln, is it an Aviator? They also had a 4.6 4-valve for those. Richard, did you ever test a 2-valve 5.4 modular motor? I haven't ever run a 5.4 2-valve. Do you consider the 4.6 3-valve or the 4.6 2-valve more reliable in handling boost? I don't think that way about either one of those. I've run boost on both of them, but I haven't done it in a vehicle and driven it around to see which one would be better for that. Richard, was the 5.4 4-valve in today's video an aluminum block? It was a Navigator motor, so I'm thinking that it was an iron block. Let me see if I can see a picture of it. I'm thinking it was an iron block. Let me see if I can get to it here. Five, 4. Let's see. Kind of hard to tell from here. Let's see. It looks like it's an iron block. Yeah, it's an iron block. The 5.4 4-valve didn't have stock internals. What's your favorite year of the Trans Am? Are you talking about the Trans Am, the vehicle, or the Trans Am, the racing series? Speaking of venting, what's adequate what matters in deciding how much is needed. We run a big vent tube on the engine dyno out of the valve cover when we're running LS motors, or when we're running anything really. You don't want to have inadequate venting. I like to err on we have more than we need. We need more Ford tests. There's probably hundreds of videos up on Ford stuff. Andrew Lavender has 5.4 2-valve with 1,000 horsepower. It's not that hard to do, given what we make NA. You just have to have, like, this 5.4 4-valve did over 1,000 horsepower. Do carb spacers work? Yes, they do. Was wondering about carb heat shields on the dual plane. A heat I don't know how well the heat shield is going to work on a carburetor, only because the carburetor is solidly bolted to the heat shield, which is also solidly bolted, although I guess there could be a gasket which might help insulate it. But it's actually attached to the engine. And also, even if you have a heat shield, if you have the carburetor and the rest of the motor inside an enclosed engine compartment, it's all getting heat. It's not just getting heat from the engine, but it's getting lots of radiant heat also. So I would imagine that a heat shield doesn't keep the carburetor any cooler in that environment. And if it does, I'd like to see what the difference is. The very early Navigators had 5.4 2-valves, and the rest had double overhead cams. And they had 5.4 2-valves too in the trucks, right? I have a 2003 5.4 2-valve, and it new heads on it. Runs like brand new. Poncho's bird was weird with both formula scoops and extractors, and the TA shaker and TA extractors. I think after 81, the Pontiacs were Olds engines. I bought a 2002 Mustang with a 5.4 2-valve Lightning engine without the blower. It runs with the Mustang 5-liter 5.4 computer, but not so well. Well, it sounds like it needs to be tuned, or it also sounds like it needs boost. 3071s, is that a good choice for a 6.8 2-valve? Yeah, because that thing's probably like a 300 horsepower motor anyway. It's going to make a lot of torque, but it'd be interesting to see what the back pressure is. Is pro charging a 2004 Mach 1 a good idea for reliable power or twin turbo? Both of those will be reliable if they are tuned properly. And you don't need to apply forged internals. You should, however, put ring gap in it. I would take the heads off and take the pistons out, put ring gap in it, and then put good head gaskets and head studs in it, and then you should be really good. Ben Alameda likes using heat shields. I just like to see what the temperature differences is on the heat shields. I've only needed tech support for compatibility checks. I read in a book that Navigator had steel cranks in them from Ford. They did. I think that the 5.4 cranks were steel, right? Well, we're on Ford stuff. Have you ever tested a Yamaha SHO Taurus motor? Only on the chassis dyno. I was doing a lot of stuff with the guys at the show shop back in the day when they were doing, because my buddy Bernie worked there, and I know Vadim and the guy that owned it and all of those guys. So I was there when they were doing a lot of cool stuff. North Star versus a 4.6 liter. I've never run a North Star, so it'd be hard for me to compare those. A friend of mine had a 350 Rocket and a Pontiac. I thought that the Rockets were the Oldsmobile engines. The problem, the problem with the Pontiacs and also the 440 Chrysler, somebody was comparing those two, is that like with the Chryslers, the 440 heads that those flowed like small block heads, so they didn't have anywhere near enough flow. Most of the Pontiac heads also didn't flow, with the exception of the Ram Air 5 head, which did. And I don't know, maybe the Ram Air 4 head flowed a little better. 50% car guy and 50% motorcycle guy. How restrictive is the stock air box and air intake? Probably not very much. Currently making 365. My tuner recommended an S&B air intake for the next bolt-on. You can try that with just take the I think if you take the lid off of the air box and just aim it up, and so you're not breathing through the filter, and just see if there's anything there. Why no performance heads for the 3-valve modular? It just didn't catch on the way that the I thought Ford Racing did a 3-valve modular intake manifold, and they did. Somebody offered. I mean, there are ported stock heads, just like there are ported 2-valve heads. Although Trickful makes a 2-valve head, and then other people have ported 4-valve heads too. You can put a Boss 302 intake, the Coyote intake on the 5.4s with adapters on it. I'd like to see what those adapters look like and see. I don't know what the width is on the intake manifold versus where the ports are, how much of an angle they have to have. Do you have a dyno video comparing Ford Racing Alphabet cams? No, I have tested those way back, before there was video, before video was invented. And I'm getting ready to retest it because we're comparing the Alphabet cams to the new Summit versions. I always thought it'd be cool to two-valve 5.4 swap Crown Victoria. The bigger motor will definitely make more power. It will certainly make more torque. I wish I knew if I could switch to 4-valve heads on my Triton 5.4 liter. You can put 4-valve heads on it. It just takes a little bit of doing. Is a Gen 4 LS the only one that have cam sensors in the front covers? Yes. The Gen 3s do not. Although on the LS2, there was some intermediate stuff there that had where they had a weird combination of 4x and 58x or 1x and 24x stuff. It was LS2 specific or right around that year where they were introducing that. So it might be that you would find that, but that would be the exception. How much power will a stock 2L crank? The crank is not the thing that you have to worry about. You won't break that. I'm neither a Ford nor a Chevy guy. I'm an engine guy. I heard the O3 Terminators have a cooling problem in one of the heads. Can anybody confirm that? I remember them talking about that. I thought that there was some kind of weird fix that they did. We didn't obviously ever have that problem on the dyno, but I remember them talking about that. That one side was not cooling as well as the other. Ford Triton modified V8 or a Coyote makes a lot more power than a conventional 4.6 or 5.4 modified motor does. The exceptions obviously would be the Shelby stuff, the supercharged stuff. A buddy of mine has an 05 GT with a 4.6. He got it with a KENNE supercharger already installed. The guy who had it before said it hit 12 pounds and threw a rod. What better rods do you need? There are lots of rods available, but the rod didn't break because of 12 pounds. We've run way more boost than that with stock rods, and so that's not a rod versus boost thing. That wasn't tuned thing, or he missed a shift or something and broke a rod. I know it's a weird question. Have you ever done any testing with Euro stuff with Audi? Only on the chassis dyno, not on the engine dyno. Are you sure? A Goodfellows? Is that directed at me or is it somebody else? Are you sure you know what you're talking about? Never seen your racing or your motors out there? That's all I've been doing for the last 30 years is direct back-to-back testing of dyno stuff, of parts and engines and stuff. And maybe if you've been racing for a long time, maybe you read the book that I wrote on modular stuff. So I think the answer is probably yes. I have a Navigator 5.4 that I pulled out of an old block. Would you say it's worth building or should I just start over with a Coyote? Is it damaged right now? I mean, does it need to be rebuilt? We've run lots of those from the wrecking yards and they work pretty well. If I won the recent Powerball, I hired Nelson Racing Engine and Brodix to build me an 800 cubic inch Coyote. That'd be a lot. You'd have to have them build some new heads and all that stuff too. They do have Mahovitz has those the build it Coyote blocks now. I remember doing a story on those a year or two back. Early today, lots of questions about getting more torque. Not sure how it goes with the Coyote stuff. Navigators were the top dog motors besides Ford GT stuff to build in the day. I don't think anybody's made the power with a Coyote that Mahovitz and the guys from MMR have done with the earlier modular stuff. I know that they were with the Coyote stuff. They were breaking the blocks at a much lower power level than those guys are at with the Texas blocks. And obviously, they didn't use a Coyote to go 300 with the Ford GT. Richard, I wish I could give a thumbs up to some of the comments on the chat. There's a lot of good information here. That's why I like it that people come here and they're all helping and sharing. If you use Boss rods and a 2-valve, will stock pistons work? I don't know. Are they the same length and are they the same width and all that? I've never even tried to do that. I haven't looked any further into those new rods, and nobody's contacted me about that. If I won the Powerball, I wouldn't have to build a dream engine. I would just go buy a McLaren F1 and then I would put turbos on it. Good fellows. I don't understand why you're coming here complaining about stuff. Everybody here is here to help everybody else. If you're feeling inferior and you want to stand out, or you're mad that somebody else is getting attention, this is not the way to do it. You shouldn't be here doing that. If you want to come here and add information, like you want to add value, and if somebody has a question about modular forge, that's good. If you want to come here and tell everybody how you're the coolest guy and you're the fastest guy in the world, this is not the place for that. The ego thing is not, that's not what goes around here. We want information and we want people that are going to help. If that's not you, then you don't need to be here. How hard is it to find Coyote blocks in the wrecking yard? I don't think I've ever seen any Coyote blocks. We would find the F-250 5-liter stuff, and I haven't seen a lot of those, or I don't know that I've ever seen more than 1 or 2 of those, but they would be, because they made so many more trucks than they made Coyotes, obviously the cars, and the Coyotes would be more sought after. So you'd be more likely to find the truck versions. Finally got to drive my Regal tonight. That's good. Do the truck 5-liters sound rough like the Coyotes? The trucks have different cams in them, though. And guys can make lots of power with the, because you can make a Coyote out of the truck version, so that it would do the same thing. And the truck has a different intake too. But I mean, if you were going to Coyoteize it, that you would do that, or if you'd put a Boss intake manifold or any of those that we've tested 100 times. Well, why, Dan? Why did you go just under the speed of sound? Were you flying the plane or were you riding it? Because if you tell me you were flying the plane, I would be impressed. I think the truck heads are the same. I haven't seen the F-150 960 truck that you're talking about. So Cletus has that truck? I don't think I've seen that. I follow him and I've seen some of his posts, but I haven't seen that. Luke Air Force Base, it wouldn't let us break the sound barrier, yeah, in your residential areas. Buzzkill. So, is there something you would change on the GT500 motor pictured in the thumbnail? 57% are saying yes. I'm curious to what those things they would change. So they're doing a giveaway with it. That'll be cool. When you add boost to a powerful naturally aspirated motor like the Coyote or even a modified Coyote, same thing with the LS. If you add boost to a motor that's making 500 or 600 horsepower NA, I mean, some fairly serious power happens like right away. Do you think you'll ever test 4.6 valve engines again? I don't know. I may do some more stuff with Mahovets. They have some Kenny Bell stuff that they want to try, so I may run some more of those. I remember you did a comp cam test for the 2-valve, but did you like the 268 best with the PI intake manifold? You can look up, the video has all of the cams. We tested 6 sets of them. So we tested all 3 of the PI and all 3 of the non-PI, so you could see what all the power curves did. Richard, have you ever used ON3 turbos? I haven't, not from them specifically. Although the sizes would be similar, and they probably use turbos that are like the GT45 that we've done that are sized like that. Retired for 20 years, U.S. Air Force. Thank you for your service. I thought you had to be somewhere at 8. I do. Time just flies. LS versus the 5.4. I would pick an LS only because the 5.4 is so big and wide that I don't think it would fit in a lot of places. And the LS will fit fairly easily. And an aluminum LS, like a 5.3 like I have, would be a really good choice. Dirty Weapons Flightline guy. Did some work and drove a customer's 16 Coyote with a D1X on it. An E85. Nice. 800 the tires. That would be good. Will, I do actually want to test that Chopacabra cam and the Truck Norris cam. Ultra, Richard, Mercedes-Benz makes an OEM compound turbo. Is it on a diesel? Can you change the firing order on the truck? Well, you can change the firing order with camshaft, right? No. The firing order would be crankshaft too, though, right? I don't have a 7.3 liter Godzilla plan, although Mahovit said he had one that we could run. We haven't done anything on it yet. I'm sending Richard a Godzilla motor. Casey, I would like to run a Ford V10 with boost only because it would be cool to have a V10 with boost with twin turbos on it. A local tuner said he could reflash ECU to 5.4 NA, but I have to change injectors to the 5.4 NA injectors. Is there? Well, that's right. If the 5.4 NA injectors are a different size, substantially different than whatever other thing you're flashing it from, that would make sense. Because otherwise, if he's supplying a given amount of duty cycle on the injector and the injector is bigger or smaller, it's definitely going to change the amount of fuel that's going to the motor. Mercedes has a turbo supercharger set up on the A series. An EcoBoost. I've done chassis dyno stuff on those, but not engine dyno. How much would a supercharged 2-valve 5.4 pickup with a decent port job, like porting the heads? You'd be better off first with cams and then ported heads. What is the easiest way to identify 2-valve? The valve covers is the easiest way. Our 4E computers. Just try putting them online and see if there's any value. So I'm going to go ahead and close our poll because it's time to get going. There's something you would change on the thumbnail photo. 57% are saying yes. I would make a cold air setup for it. It would be much better. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, except for the one guy that was obviously angry and needs a hug or something. Come here to help or don't come. It's very simple. Again, thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all in the morning. And if you haven't, please go take a look at the Ford Modular video. Those don't usually get nearly as many views, but it's always good that, we got to mix it up. We have to do different kinds of motors because I have tested lots and lots of different ones, and we'll keep putting that stuff up. I will see you guys all tomorrow.